Yeah, good go.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's one.
Yeah.
You bet you, man. Got him.
Hey everybody, I'm Rich Harrod, and this is Harrod Outdoors Videocast episode 7, and we're going to be talking about walleye fishing today. And here I've got Bob Loomis from Mack's Lure with me again, and it's about springtime, and so we want to talk to you about walleye fishing. We have several episodes of the Northwest Outdoorsman television show that feature walleye fishing here in the Pacific Northwest. Again, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to get automatic notifications of each of these video casts, as well as our television shows as we post those. Again, walleye fishing is our topic today, and it's something that Bob and I have really come to enjoy here in the Pacific Northwest. We have some great fisheries here, and they're just a wonderful fish to eat. They're a fun fish to catch because it's a little bit like hunting. You really got to hunt for them, and they're affected by the weather just like most fish, but maybe even more so. So, you know, one of the episodes we made was with Tyler here a while back, where we went out and we stayed. You unfortunately couldn't stay with us, but we stayed at Banks Lake, and Banks Lake happens to be one of the lakes that we have that has a great walleye population in it. So, Bob had joined us out there for that, and we fished and did pretty well. It was tough, it was cold, and this time of year when you're out fishing, as the water's beginning to warm, you're really going to have to hunt for those walleye. So that's kind of what our topic is today. You know, when did you kind of start getting involved in this walleye fishery? I mean, you're kind of a salmon guy, right?
You know, I've always been a die-in-the-wool, you know, steelhead salmon fisherman, and,
right.
You know, moving back over here to Eastern Washington and getting involved with Mack's Lure and everything. You know, that's one of the 2 or 3 large fisheries that we're involved with. You know, the kokanee trout thing is obviously a huge thing with us,
right.
But because of some of our products that we have, you know, the smile blade, things
Sure.
of that nature, it really lends itself to trolling for walleye.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's what a lot of our products are geared around, is the troll fisheries.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're fishing live bait, whether you're fishing night crawlers, you know, crawler harness type setups, things of that nature.
Right.
Still, we've got a number of different types of trolling products for different types of applications.
Yep. And I think, just like we've discussed before in previous episodes, this is one of those fisheries that they know a lot more about them out in the Midwest. You know, the walleye have been here in the Pacific Northwest for quite a few years, but as a popular fishery, it really hasn't been around as long as it has in the Midwest. And they use all kinds of different techniques to fish for them out back in the Midwest. Our primary way is to troll or jig. We don't do a whole lot of setting where you might use bait, like a bobber sort of fishery. We do pull plugs a little bit, but it's not very popular. It's not something that we do a lot of. And the other thing about here that's a little bit different is some of our walleye fisheries are in the lakes, or I mean in the rivers as well. We have a couple lakes, but we also have walleye in the Columbia River system, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And there's some big ones too, that come from the Columbia River. And so, you know, that's a little harder to do some of the other techniques. Trolling seems to work the best. It's the better presentation. So yeah, a lot of the Mack's Lure products that we use are well suited to troll.
Yeah, yeah. You know, like we said, you know, there's a number of different styles of trolling, or I should say different areas where you're going to troll. You want to troll a shallow, weedy area. You want to use something that gives you a little bit of flotation in order to keep your bait up out of that weedy stuff,
right.
And you know, right in the edge of it. But man, when you're trolling stuff, especially with metal bladed type products, you know, you're down there dredging the bottom,
mm-hmm,
and you're hung up more, and you're dredging more solid than you are anything else.
Right.
When you're fishing stuff like one of our products is a walleye pop. Walleye pop has a pill float and surgical tubing that are extremely buoyant. So in turn, it ends up moving or staying up higher in the water column than as you're dragging your lead down across the bottom, a bottom bouncer, you're dragging that down on the bottom. Well, your bait's up a little bit higher in the water column, so it's staying up out of that weeds and stuff, which in turn the fish can see it. Obviously, they're going to want to attack it immediately.
Right.
So
a basic setup for trolling, maybe let's talk about that real quick, that we would use. The type of rod and the basic setup. So let's just talk about a bottom bouncer setup. So what kind of a rod do we like to use?
Well, you know, for a bottom bouncer, everybody's a little bit different. You know, I'm a rod snob to begin with. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth in this industry is designing blanks, designing rods, you know, manufacturing, all of that stuff.
You might have recognized the name Loomis. I mean, come on.
But it's one of those things that once you understand a fishery, you can understand what it is you're trying to achieve with these are tools. Every bit of this stuff is nothing but a tool to achieve one thing: catch more fish. So in turn, my style and what I enjoy to work with is, you know, 7.5 to 8 foot bottom bouncing rod is going to consist of about an 8 to 17 pound faster action type rod. Lighter tip section so I can feel the extremely light stuff. I mean, these fish will get very finicky, and they will do nothing more than, as you're trolling, they'll go up and they'll grab onto that and they'll swim with it same speed as what you're doing. You don't even know you got anything on there.
Yes,
you don't even feel anything.
They just clamp.
Yeah, is all they'll do is just hang on to it, and they'll just swim with it in their mouth. I mean, I've seen it happen. You know, we've caught lots of fish that way, and especially bigger fish earlier in the year.
Yeah, and they get real lethargic.
Oh, they get real lethargic, and they don't want to play the game the way that everybody is. So in turn, having that lighter tipped rod really gives you that sensitivity and helps you feel what you need to feel. But I like to have a little bit heavier butt section in order to control things, as well as when I'm fishing a little bit heavier lead. You know, when you're fishing that 3-4 ounces in 60-70 feet of water, which they don't do back in the Midwest.
No, they don't.
You know, their lakes aren't that deep to begin with.
And in the Columbia River, you got to fish with heavier lead just so that you can keep it on the bottom, because there's a lot of current. But so another thing that we do so we have a rod that Bob described, but we also use braided line, and it seems like we pretty much all of our rods are set up with a 20-pound braided line. It does two things for you. One is it helps with that detection of the bite, because it doesn't have any give, and so when that fish does bite, you're going to now feel it in your rod tip, and you're not going to lose that you know, through the monofilament. So we really like using a braided line for that reason. It's strong, it has a small diameter, so it cuts the water well, especially if you're fishing deep or in heavy current. That way you can eliminate, you know, you don't have to fish as heavy a lead. Exactly. So that's what we use, that style of rod, that kind of fishing line. And then a basic setup for many of our lakes or rivers is what we call a bottom bouncer. And bottom bouncer is just basically a you know, what we're getting down to the bottom with lead. Bobby has his set up here on a slider. They can be set up so that they're more, the connection here is on your main line fixed solid, and your gear is out in this direction. But essentially what ends up happening is this thing just bounces along the bottom, and that's why they call it a bottom walker, because it looks like, it appears that it's bouncing across the bottom. And then terminal tackle is kind of what we really want to focus on, and we have all kinds of things that we use. But one of the keys is matching the forage. Isn't that right? Absolutely. Knowing the lake or the river at that given time of, you know, matching, what they call match the hatch. You want to know what are those fish feeding on. You know, at any given time, say it's early in the year. You don't want to be fishing crawdads, or a crawdad pattern, a color, your oranges and blacks and things like that, that a lot of your crawfish are colored-wise dark mid-season, when those fish are coming out of the rocks, you know, late springtime, things like that. Early in the year, you know, those aren't there. So you don't play with that type of stuff. But you turn around and you've got perch
or you've got shad, or you've got some other type of mud minnow, some type of bait fish that these fish are feeding on, that's what you want to do, is you want to try to match the hatch to what you're doing. Yeah. So you would rig that whole thing up as far as color-wise to what you're trying to do with your bottom bouncer on there. A lot of this stuff, I like fishing 5 and 6 foot leaders on these bottom bouncers with our different styles of hooks and styles of fisheries. You know, I've got a what we call a super slow death hook, extreme bend in the hook. You slide a night crawler up on that thing, and when it's going through the water column, it's rotating. So it's another added movement to what you're doing. You know, with the smile blade on there, since the smile blade is offset, when you pinch them together, whatever's behind that actually moves it back and forth. So you have another added movement. So between that going back and forth and your hook rotating around, you know, something's going to want to bite. Right. I mean, you got to egg them into wanting to eat anything. But that's what you're doing, is you're trying to match the hatch and utilizing different types of product throughout the year. You've got stuff that's a typical crawler harness. You know, a crawler harness is a 2-hook setup to where you are anywhere from 1.5 inches to 3 inches with a double hook setup that you would hook up a night crawler to and use that.
You know, I really like this color combination of the double whammy. The chartreuse and greens tend to be really a go-to color.
Oh, absolutely.
Almost all times of the year. So those work great.
Well, it's high UV. High UV colors. I mean, that's always going to work. Then you've got another type of product, which is the VMC Spindrift hook that we've got set up with a pill float and a smile blade that does the same thing. It gives you a different type of movement. This one actually works really well in the early springtime when you're talking about out here in our areas, in lakes or in the rivers. When you're using them, I'd say like mid-April through the 1st of June type time frame. These work fantastic out here for a lot of stuff. The walleye pop is always going to work because of the fact that the way it moves in the water with that buoyancy that it gets, and the 1.5 inch smile blade, you're going to get almost a crankbait type movement in the water. So it works almost year round.
Well, the nice thing about all of your products, we're showing you some examples here that you can see in the packages. You know, this is the Spindrift walleye, the double whammy walleye, and the walleye pop, super slow death smile blade, and they come in so many color combinations.
Yes.
So I mean, that's the whole idea. The idea is that the more color combinations, the more you can kind of match that forage, and it's really important. Now, in the early part of the year, like we are now, so as we're all getting ready to go out to the lakes and go for those first fish, they're really deep. For one thing, they could be in 50 to 70 feet of water depending on where you're fishing, and you need to troll really slow and darker colors. So dark reds, black and gold, a very dark green, and sometimes what we even find is that we'll take purples. Purples is another great color. Sometimes what we'll find is that we're only using a smile blade and a slow death hook or a double hook setup because, again, fish are finicky. Sometimes making the profile smaller helps you. So, try a variety of different things, but right now you're not going to be using a lot of bright colors, as you just mentioned, because those are going to be later. Walleye tend to be predatory fish, and so they chase, they ambush, but when the water's cold and lethargic, it's hard to get them to bite.
Oh, absolutely.
It's real hard to get them to bite.
And that's the one nice thing about having the smile blade.
Right.
The smile blade, you control that down to less than 1/4 mile an hour, which means that, when we're fishing, especially, I can remember, fishing in February out here when we have open water, we're trolling it at 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 miles per hour.
Right.
And doing well.
And doing well, and the other thing about it is that you tend to get your larger fish then. And so in February and March, when we've been fishing, that's been our experience over the years, that we tend to get better quality, larger fish. A lot of those we're putting back because they're large females, but we're getting those really nice sized fish that are fun to catch this time of year in that deep water. And so it can really be a lot of fun. But you've got to go slow. You've got to really troll slow. Now the other thing is, regardless of what terminal tackle you choose, we always use night crawlers, and it kind of depends on what it is you're using. These double hook setups, like the double whammy, for example, you're going to fish with the entire length of the worm. And one of the things that we find, whether you're fishing in the summer where the fish are really chasing well, or even in the winter like this, or we're coming into spring, is that if those fish are just biting lightly and you feel a bite but you didn't get them, and you pull your gear up and you find that the tip of that worm is the only thing they got, then shorten your worm. Shorten it right down so it's close to that trailing hook, and then you'll tend to get them to get more onto your hook. But for the most part, these are designed so you fish a whole worm. Now, you had mentioned before how to fish the super slow death, and we pinch those, right?
Yeah. You'll say, well, the super slow death, you actually don't have to pinch. It actually will rotate with a full night crawler. The regular slow death hooks,
right,
the original fine wire ones, you have to pinch those off to really get them to rotate.
That's the
good.
Super one that you
right,
have here. Yeah.
Right.
And so you'll pinch that. Just about a 1/4 inch or so right here. Basically, you thread your worm up so that it goes all the way up to the eye of the hook, and then you want it to come straight off the back, and then you're going to just pinch it right here. And again, that fish now is going to be on the hook when it bites. So especially in the winter months like this or early spring, it's helpful when they're just lethargic and they're kind of going like this. The other thing we do is we use Procure bait scents for just about every time that we fish. It really does help a lot. It gives you that little bit extra edge. And this particular one is a night crawler, so you're getting a lot of night crawler scent that they use real bait. And that's a neat thing. We've both been able to go and see what they do at their factory, and it's no joke. They use real stuff. Boy, I'm telling you what, that's a slimy place.
It is.
But it's exactly what a fisherman wants. You want real bait.
Absolutely.
That's what you're after. And these gels will stick to your gear very well. And I've noticed, especially, I use the trophy walleye a lot and the night crawler scent, and I'd say 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1 at times when I'm comparing having it or not. So I think it really does make a difference, and particularly for a finicky fish. I think that one little extra thing is good for you to have. Now, the other thing we have out here are the Sonics. We talked about the Sonic baitfish a little bit.
Well, the Sonic baitfish is something that's kind of referred to as a jigging spoon. And a jigging spoon is something that emulates a bait. It emulates some type of forage in the system. I always tell this to people. It's something that, if I had to pick one lure, absolutely one lure, and I could fish nothing else, and fish from west coast to east coast, saltwater to saltwater, freshwater in between, any type of fish, if I could only pick one lure, it was most likely going to be a jigging spoon. It emulates a fish, and I can fish it in so many different ways that I can proficiently catch virtually anything that swims. Mm-hmm. I mean, virtually anything that swims.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it.
Like the Sonic, for instance, is set up with the pull point on the back that I can fish it like a blade bait. Mm-hmm. Blade baiting is a huge portion of the walleye fisheries. You're talking about emulating a wounded fish on the bottom. You're picking that thing up, vibrating up, and fluttering back down to the bottom. Vibrating up, going back down. You're drawing fish to it, and in turn, triggering fish to want to hit. It can be fished off of the front or the back, depending on what your type of movement you're trying to get to. But you can swim it in the water column. Mm-hmm. You can cast it, drop it to the bottom, jig it back like a twitching type action. You know, there's no wrong way to fish it, other than trying to trigger those fish. Once you figure out how that bait moves in the water, you can trigger them to eat. And early in the springtime is a tremendous time.
Well, I remember now, and if you go to the Banks Lake walleye episode here on the YouTube channel, you're going to see the one that I mentioned with my son Tyler, who fished with us. But on one of the first trips that we went out, you and I, in that episode, we were there early in the spring, and you know, Bobby's kind of one of those guys that he's got to have as many rods in the water as he's possibly legal to do. I mean, come on. You got to catch the fish.
You got to give them what they want.
So a lot of times what we're doing is we're trolling, because you can have 2 rods here in Washington with your 2-rod permit on most of the bodies of water. You want to make sure you check the regulations so you know where you can and can't. But at Banks Lake you can have 2 rods each. And one of the things Bobby likes to do a lot is we're trolling. We've got our trolling rods out in the rod holders, and if he spots fish on the depth finder, he likes to use the sonic bait fish. And in that episode, you had done that. You had spotted some fish, and you had, you know, cast the sonic bait fish out, let it drift to the bottom, back over to where we had just crossed, and you caught a couple of dandies with the sonic bait fish doing that.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of triggering those fish to want to hit. You know, we trolled through them a couple times. We knew where they were at. Going back through them again and throwing the sonic as we're going through there, and you know, twitching it, getting them to want to bite that. You know, that's the name of the game. Figure out what they want, or at least egg them into wanting to bite something.
It was pretty cool, and you'll see that in that episode. The nice sized fish that we pulled off the bottom with the sonic bait fish. And so, you know, don't be afraid to try different things. You can you know, change up depending on what the fish want. The key is to get them to bite and get them to your boat. That's what you're there for. And so, you know, don't be afraid to try different things. We often will go through a lot of different presentations while we're out there. We'll fish our go-to lures, but if they're not working, we're going to try some different stuff. And then one of the things that we both really enjoy doing is trying new stuff. And that's kind of a lot of how Mack's Lure comes up with innovative designs, is that, you know, there those of us out there trying these things, especially you, are trying these different presentations, seeing what combinations of products work well together, and then coming up with new lures, and that's a lot of fun. And walleye are just kind of one of those fish where I really believe that you can't have too many different styles of presentation.
Oh, there's no doubt.
I don't think.
You know, the neat thing that you know, is something that you can really work on is you troll until you come through a large batch of fish. You can't get them to go, but you know where those fish are. You mark those fish, and you go back over the top of them, and then you work them with a jig or with a jigging spoon. You'll get those fish to go. I mean, it's just a matter of getting them, you know, triggering that fish to want to bite. So it's a good way, or a good method to catch a lot of fish.
So when you're fishing for a walleye, it's real important that you pay attention to your electronics. They're a gregarious fish. That means they're together. They like structure. So they'll be on points. They'll be on little rocky shoals. They might even be later on when you get weed bottoms hiding in the weeds, and then they'll ambush small fish as they come out of that. And so especially if you get bit, make sure you mark it on your electronics and go back to those same spots, because there's going to be numerous fish there. They don't move around a whole lot, and so that's a nice thing. And that's one reason why, if you're not getting bit, you can stop and you can give them a better presentation by jigging right on top of them, then you might have good luck. But it's real important to pay attention to your electronics.
Well, you know, one thing that you want to always do with everything that you're doing, it doesn't matter whether you are using fishing live bait, where you're just fishing well, you can't fish leeches here, where you're fishing just a night crawler with a smile blade, or you're fishing whatever. Any time that you're trolling, you try to get as much attraction in the water as possible. So it depends obviously on where you're fishing, but with most of our fisheries, where you're fishing in the river or you're fishing in the lakes, you try to get as much attraction in the water as you can.
Right.
Put a blade up above your
smile blade.
Yeah,
or
put it
above your
above your bottom walker. You know, make sure and have a good spinner or a good blade on top of your gear. Sometimes they don't even want a blade. They want something that you know, you need a small presentation, and you obviously can drop down with blade size, but you need to change or adapt to what they're wanting, and that's the name of the game. Fortunately, with the different types of products that we have at Mack's Lure, we've got stuff that will actually pretty much fit anything that you want as far as trolling gear.
Yep.
So
yeah, for sure. And I like the fact that smile blades come in all kinds of sizes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of times I find like this time of year, kind of a dark blue, especially the silver blue tiger in your smallest size, the 0.8. That works really well just by itself with a glow bead and worm. And sometimes when they're being real finicky, that's what you can do. Other times we're using a larger smile blade, especially if the water's murky. For example, we shot a show which some of you may have seen, where we fished below the John Day Dam on the Columbia River.
Yep.
And so you want to check out that episode here. And this is a Lower Columbia walleye was what the name of the show was. And the water was really murky. It was a lot of sediment in it. We had quite a bit of runoff. And so it was really hard for those fish to see in that water, and we were catching fish, but the thing that we had really good luck with is when we started putting down the UV lemon lime smile blades.
Yeah, the new smile blade.
And the larger size, and we were also putting additional smile blades on our line up around our bottom bouncers, and as soon as we got that more attraction, that more flash in the water,
yep,
it was the difference maker.
Oh.
It was really was. And you folks will see that, and we caught some outstanding fish by doing that.
We went from catching, you know, one fish every 15-20 minutes to you know, you couldn't run 2 rods.
Right.
A guy couldn't run 2 rods.
Right.
So I mean, it was good, very good.
So that's a nice thing about the variety in the smile blades and the color combinations is, you know, look at your water conditions and make sure that you're providing the flash that you need to get those fish over there to bite. So maybe the last thing we'll talk about a little bit is one of the main reasons to get hooked on walleye, of course, is eating them. And I'll tell you, eating walleye, I mean, they're wonderful fish. They are a little bit sweet. It's a white fish, so it's real mild. You know, people talk about fishy taste. Walleye don't have that. They're real sweet, delicious, light meat. And it's great cooked all kinds of ways. You can bake it, you can fry it, you can use it in fish tacos, all kinds of things. But one of our very favorite ways to do it is to deep fry it. And as long as you have good hot oil and you're using a light batter, you're not getting a whole lot of oil anyway. And our lemon and dill fish seasoning works perfect for frying fish. And the way we do it is you fillet the fish out so that you just have the meat, no bones. Cut them into nice sized pieces for like the fish and chip size. You make yourself a dredging station where you do flour with some of our seasoning, an egg wash, and then panko, the breadcrumbs, with the seasoning as well. And don't be afraid to use the seasoning. You want to get that flavor in there. And then you just take your cut pieces, put it in the flour, put it in the egg wash, put it in the panko, and then fry it. You can do it in a pan, or you can use a deep fryer. You could even bake it if you want. And one of the other ways we do it is we make baked walleye with our Parmesan seasoning as well, and it's a similar kind of recipe. On the YouTube channel here, we have a number of 1-minute recipe segments that show you how to make a variety of ways to prepare a walleye. We also have Harrod's Cookhouse Field to Table, which is our other television show that we make that has all kinds of interesting recipes to try for fish and wild game. But I think what you're going to find as you really like eating walleye this way. We did some some crappie that way once too, didn't we? When we were
yeah.
down at the Snake River. Now you talk
Yeah.
about a fish fry.
Oof, that was good.
It's good.
Yeah.
So it's a really good way to do it, and I think you're going to find you really will like walleye. Now the other thing is with any fish, as far as storing it goes, once you get them, you clean them off, get them nice and dry. The best way to do fish for long-term storage in your freezer is actually to vacuum seal, rather than using a plastic bag or wrapping them in cellophane or something like that. It's best to use a vacuum sealer, and you're getting all that air out, and that'll allow the fish to last, you know, up to 6 months. And really with walleye or any other fish, you know, I particularly don't like my fish to go that long in the freezer. If I haven't eaten it by then, it's going to start losing some of its good flavor, and it's going to taste like it's been in the freezer. So
Well, you get that freezer burn and stuff.
yeah, so even vacuum sealed, you know, you don't want to go that long. So, you know, fillet your fish out, vacuum seal it, and especially in the first 3 to 4 months, it's going to be just like you caught it when you thaw it out and make your walleye fish tacos, which is just wonderful way to eat walleye. So
I'll tell you what, one of the things that you know, Kimberly made me I can't fry all the time. So
Yes.
in turn, I
Yeah.
have to try things a little bit differently. But
Right.
I'll take it and put it in a tinfoil boat
Mm-hmm.
and take the whole fillet and lay it out, sprinkle that on,
Mm-hmm.
and put it on the barbecue.
Yes.
Don't turn it. Leave it on one
Correct.
side, and then cook it for about that medium high
Yeah.
heat.
Yeah.
And you'll cook it for maybe about 3 to 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Put a pat of butter on that, and then maybe sprinkle just a touch more.
Kind of brings out the flavors of the
my
seasoning.
God.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good way, and
Yeah.
you know, one of the ways that I've tried is just simply leave the skin on, and just like you would a salmon, and,
Yep.
and do it that way.
Put that right on the grill.
Put it right on the grill, or you can do it as he mentioned, where you can put it in the aluminum foil boat. Either way, it's going to be very, very good. Now, the way you know it's done, and don't overcook walleye, just like any other fish, is just as soon as it flakes. You know, with salmon or steelhead or trout, when it flakes, and you can look in there, and you can tell when it's just not quite done, because it still has that sort of real bright pink in there. You're waiting for that to go. But generally, when a fish flakes, when you can break open each of those little elements of the muscle and see all the way down to the tinfoil or the skin, you know that it's done. And don't go any further, because you're just really drying the fish out. So that's what you don't want to do.
That's one of the biggest problems that people have, is they overcook fish.
And then then
they
those
don't
strong,
like it.
you know, and those strong flavors will really come out when you
Yep.
do that.
Exactly. Right, Maisie? That's
Maisie
right.
thinks so too. So we
Exactly.
start talking about food, and of course here she comes.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so walleye fishing again here in Washington. We have the Columbia River, we have Banks Lake, we have a number of other bodies of water around the Northwest here that have great walleye populations, and so you should get out there and try it.
Yeah.
You really should get out there and try it.
Well, the thing that's really neat about this fishery here that we've got is people back in the Midwest, where these fish actually came from. You know, these fish were brought out here 50 years ago and put into our lakes and rivers, and it's something that the state really didn't want, because we're known as steelhead and salmon fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? These fish are a tremendous fish to eat, catch. It's a lot of fun. But I'll tell you, people would give their left arm to come out here and fish what we've got, because of the fact that most of our fish are a little bit larger than what they have on average back in the Midwest. And, the state record was broke, 2 years ago, 20 plus pound walleye. Right now, they're catching some really good fish on the Columbia River.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of stuff that we have going out here that people just overlook. They don't understand the fisheries, and they're not really, knowing what to do. You know what? Call somebody, learn a little bit. If you need help, give us a call at the shop. We'd love to, tell you how and what would work best for getting into that fishery, and get out and try it, because the fish are fantastic eating. They really are, and it's a lot of fun. Like Rich said, it's like hunting. So it's a little bit different style of fishing than other fisheries. So get out and give it a try.
Yep, and like you said, don't be afraid to call the shop and talk to them. That's their business to know what terminal tackle is going to work best for you. And believe me, they have a variety of things that will help you put fish in your boat. And if you watch our episodes, and we use Mack's lure gear exclusively when we walleye fish for sure. And so give it a try. The other thing I'll encourage you to do is visit their website, sign up for the Mack's lure Mack Attack. And again, that has all kinds of information in there month to month about how to put more fish in your boat. And also you have, oftentimes you have some recipes in there too about how to cook fish.
Yep.
Like I said, you can find all kinds of recipes here on our YouTube channel. We have little 1-minute segments. So again, please subscribe and get others to subscribe to our channel, and you'll get automatic notification. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook pages, both for Harrod Outdoors, that's where we have a lot of information about the Northwest Outdoorsman, and Harrod's Cookhouse, which is where we focus on fish and wild game cooking and talk a lot about our television show. So with that, we're going to end for this episode, and we'll be talking to you soon.